Good morning, I'm Jocelyn Lockwood, and welcome to the 411. Well, this week we learned that we'll have to wait until later this month to find out the future of Petit Theater. A hearing to talk about selling the theater pushed back yet again. A judge granted a temporary restraining order against the Petit Board of Governors' plan to sell a 60% share of the theater to restaurateur Dickie Brennan. It gives more time to either negotiate an out-of-court agreement and prepare arguments if it does end up in court. The hearing is set now for July 11th, but joining us right now to talk much more about why the theater is up for sale and why it has a buyer ready and waiting is Petit Vice Chair Michael Mitchell and Dickie Brennan Restaurant Group's namesake, Dickie Brennan. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate this. Petit, a hot topic right now in the news, a lot of wrangling going on. Let's start off by talking about the state of the theater today.
The state of the theater, if you want to talk about it physically, is disastrous. The building is almost literally falling apart. It's termite ridden. The maintenance has been deferred for many years. It's in pretty desperate shape physically. Financially, it's the same picture. We are in desperate straits financially. We've owed a huge bank note that is overdue for a long time, $700,000 note that we cannot pay. We've got huge vendor debts. We canceled the last season, and we owe our subscribers refunds that we have not yet been able to make. So that's the state that the theater is in. The Board of Governors obviously was very concerned about that, to say the least, and began casting around for any lifeline that we could find. One of the lifelines was Dickie Brennan. We approached him and many others as a philanthropic question and asked for donations and help. He was not only willing to talk to us about that, but those discussions led to what we believe is a terrific idea of the Brennan Group buying 60% of the building that we're in, which leaves the theater with the part that we need, leaves Le Petit with the auditorium itself, room for a green room, staging area, a lobby, use of the courtyard. It's a terrific deal because we will not have to pay the huge maintenance that we currently have to pay on the entire building. Instead, the Brennan Group is going to be handling that part of it.
And I'll get into the possible sale to the Brennan Group here in just a moment, but first, how did it come to be in such disrepair financially and physically?
Theaters don't make a lot of money, usually. We are a not-for-profit. The disrepair came because the maintenance had to be deferred if we couldn't afford it. It's expensive to maintain any building in the French Quarter, and especially a big old building it's very expensive to maintain. The recession didn't help. A lot of theaters across the country are closing or struggling, and that's true here locally as well. That was certainly a factor in how we got to where we are.
And there are so many people, though, so impassioned about this theater and its history. Tell me about the history of it. And that's what makes this so controversial in the first place.
Well, we are the oldest continuously operating community theater in the country. We've been at that location, the exact location, since 1962, but the theater itself goes back to 1916. That kind of tradition in a city like New Orleans, which loves tradition, does infuse a lot of emotion, a lot of passion among people. Some people, for all the right reasons, don't want anything to change.
Right.
But in this particular situation, it kind of has to. If it doesn't change, if we don't do something different, the bank is going to call the note. It's only by their grace that they haven't called it already and forced us into either bankruptcy or a sheriff's sale or something like that. And nobody wants to see that.
All right, so speaking of that change, that's where you step in. Tell me exactly what your intentions are with the theater should you purchase it.
Well, you know, initially our goal was to help. We want the theater to continue and evolve to be something that everybody in New Orleans is real proud of. And so, you know, we started conversations, and I think the initial conversations trying to raise dollars, I mean, it's financially, it's upside down. So through those conversations, there was a lot of strategic, I guess, trying to look at how do you right side something that's upside down. And if you take just the property in general, you can break it into 3 sections. You have the original theater, the historic building, which will stay under the control of the Le Petit. They will own it, operate it, control it.
And that's one of the misconceptions that's out there.
There's a lot of misconceptions.
And that is one of them.
So, so you have that section. And then if you go on the opposite side of the property, there's a building that was built in 1963. And this was the building that we initially started talking about to take this space and to create a second use, to eliminate some of the costs and overhead that currently exist. So to develop a restaurant was the idea that was thrown out there. And so then you have this third space, which is in between the historic building and the newer building. It's the foyer, where it's the entrance for the theater. There's a courtyard, and then behind it is some additional space. In our conversations, trying to figure out how to right the financial situation, we were approached about purchasing that section also. This would help to create the funds, you know, to address this deficit that the theater currently has. We would also build out bathrooms in the back section, which for anybody who's gone to Le Petit over the years, that's always been an issue. So picture a ladies' restroom with 6 stalls, you know, really an upgrade in that fashion. Now, in addition to this purchase, we agreed that we would do a restricted deed and uses, restricted uses on our part after we would purchase. This would give the theater total use of that section for any time they're having a performance. So they have the uses, the priority, whenever they're under production, to use the foyer, the courtyard, and the bathrooms. Now, we hope that that's an advantage for the theater. They end up with 1/3 of the property, but they have use of 2/3 of the property. We're purchasing 2/3 of the property and really only have use of 1/3. It helps eliminate a lot of costs and overhead for the current structure. We will maintain this property. In addition to that, you know, we've tried to bring some other benefits. We have a maintenance crew that takes care of our facilities. We've offered for them to be able to take care of the theater facility, which would be a substantial savings instead of going to the outside for air conditioning, you know, repairs and maintenance. So that's.
And so one of the things I understand that is another misconception out there is that Le Petit will now become a dinner theater.
Oh, gosh, no. that has never been in the cards. It will be a theater, period, full stop. There will be a terrific restaurant associated with it. You'll walk in the lobby, you turn to the left and you go to Dickie Brennan's, you turn to the right, you go to Le Petit. The courtyard is in front. It's going to be just like it was before. Previously, for years and decades, people would go there, they would go to the lobby, they'd go to the courtyard and get a drink, and they'd go see a play at the theater. That's still going to be what they do. They go to the lobby, they go to the courtyard and have a drink, they go to the theater. It's going to be fine. It is not dinner theater. It's no different than what many theaters across the country and on Broadway do. If you're in New York and you go to the Helen Hayes Theater, Sardi's is right there. Nobody thinks of the Helen Hayes as dinner theater because it's not. That's what we're going to have.
Okay, here's a question for you. Is Brennan's the only offer, the only thing that Le Petit is looking at? Have there been other offers? Are there other options?
There are, yes. There are other options that we've looked at, none that even come close to comparing this. One of the criticisms that the other side has leveled at us is that this whole process has not been transparent That's nonsense. You don't make multi-million-dollar deals in the newspaper. You don't call in the media to listen to negotiations between private groups, especially we had some offers where people said, I would rather you not mention my name. How are we supposed to be transparent about that? So yes, to answer your question, there were certainly other offers. Or other proposals, I'll say. They fall into two general categories. One is we would be kicked out of the building entirely because the offeror wanted to buy the entire building. That's a non-starter with us. Part of our mission is to preserve and protect that building. We want to be where we are. It's historic, it's where we belong, it's an integral part of who we are. So anyone who wants to kick us out of the building and buy the whole thing, doesn't matter how much money they put on the table, we don't want it. The other category is for people to make some sort of financial arrangements where we have to stay in the entire building. And honestly, we don't want to do that either because it's too expensive. We can't afford to be in that building, especially since a lot of it is not revenue producing. The part that's revenue producing is the theater itself, and that's what we have.
All right, well, I hate to wrap you up because we could talk about this all day, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Brennan, thank you so much for coming in. Coming up right here on the 411 after the break, we are going to hear the other side of the story from the La Petite Guild, so we'd like to give them equal time. Stay tuned for more.